Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey Brian, thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been doing this. My name's Chris Checksfield. We started Net7 about 8 years ago now, and really the reason why we started the company was my business partner and I worked for a service provider, really well-known service provider, and they went from being one of the best companies to work for to really just being a company to work for.
Yeah.
And what happened was, we just decided that we could do it better on our own. We didn't want to have to deal with, half of our day being corporate world. So we said, you know what? We can either jump ship and go work for a smaller company, or we could actually change the way the business works, and go out and start our own thing. So here we are. And we didn't go bankrupt. So kudos to us.
That's the first hurdle, right?
Not yet.
And was it scary?
Very scary. My business partner, Kerry, he was a little bit further along in his career. He had a much bigger nest egg. I essentially went broke and had to go to the well, friends and family for cash influxes, to the point where there was one time where I was at the grocery store and I tried to. I think I had 5 credit cards. They were all maxed out, and the only credit card that worked was my corporate card. So I had to buy my groceries on my corporate card.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation with my business partner the next day, because I always kind of kept it like not. I didn't want to really scare him too much and tell him that I was, on fumes. But no, it was scary. But nothing in life that is great is easy.
Yeah. And what about sales attracted you at the beginning?
Everything,
Yeah.
Brian, everything. So when I was a young kid, I remember I was my dad was a businessman, still is a businessman, and I would be in the back of the car, and I'd hear him and my grandfather talking about strategy or experiences or customer appointments, and I just liked the
Hearing
way
about
that
it.
it sounded. They were excited, right? So I always knew I wanted to be in business. I didn't know that it cost $125,000 in college education just to get an entry level sales job. But I started a business when I was about 10 or 12, just raking leaves, and I had like the 2 worst customers you could ever imagine, and that taught me a lot back in the day about boundaries. But yeah, everything about sales is what I enjoy. It's in my DNA.
And is it the winning? Is it building something? Is it competing? Is it not being in an office all day?
I think it's the creativity,
Yeah.
right? Salespeople get a bad rep because it's always about closing the deal. Like, certainly some sales jobs you got to close, right? You got to ask the question so that before they leave the dealership, you got to try and get them to make that emotional purchase, right? But in a complex business where you're performing a service and you're creating a relationship, the way you close an account is you just create a relationship, right?
Right.
And you get honest and real feedback, and I really enjoy that. And I've always fought above my weight class. When I was the first person at Paytech that in my office that was hired. I was at the point when I got hired, I was the youngest person in the country, but I was the first person in New England that was hired that didn't have a mortgage, right? And I remember I got there and I kind of lied my way through the interview process, to be honest with you. And I sitting in my desk and I'm, my cubicle, right? And I'm listening to all these salespeople talk on the phone and they're like ultra technical and savvy. And I'm like, what did I do?
I got myself into a mess.
I remember sitting there and I'm like, I got 2 options. I'm like, I either figure this out or I just go golfing and hopefully my other job will take me back. So, 15 years later, here we are.
Yeah. And what makes you a great rep?
That's an interesting question. I I think it's probably 50-50, things that make me great and things that make me challenging to work with. Um, I'm very passionate, but not just about my business, but about our customers' business. Like I really, really I get into the nitty gritty, especially with accounts that are complex. I really enjoy the hand-to-hand combat. And I think customers see that, and I think they see the passion and they realize, like, let's face it, right? In today's world, I don't care what business you're in, anybody in a decision-making, capacity, they go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting with no time to execute, right? How many times do you hear somebody in an executive level say, and they say it like with, like, they're proud of it, but they're like, yeah, I work all day and then I execute at like 7 to 10 at night, or I get up at 5 and I execute from 5 to 8 and then I start working. What I love about what we do and Net 7 does is we give people time back in their life in order to allow for them to make not just decisions, but better decisions, more educated decisions with less time that's required. Very proud of that.
Now, when you say passion, is that curiosity in what your clients are facing? Is it interest in solving a problem?
I think it's definitely interest in solving a problem, right? Like I love getting involved with complex situations where people feel a little bit over their skis, and they're worried about being able to pull things off. And, we come in and, the way my brain works is I'm a project plan kind of guy, right? I mean, if you looked at my kitchen, you wouldn't believe that because it's very dirty. But I like to boil things down to their simplest, mathematical equation and just help people make sense of complex projects. And I feel like it just kind of comes naturally to me, the way that my brain works. And now that we have some experience and some credibility in the marketplace, people are really starting to, reach out to us. And the conversations that we're having right now are just incredible with CEOs and CFOs of, Fortune 500, Fortune 200 organizations. It's really exciting.
And how do you build those relationships? Do you have a pattern? Are you unconsciously competent at it now?
Building a relationship like that is very challenging, especially on the larger business units, because everybody wants to build that relationship.
Right. Everyone wants that business.
Everybody's calling them and talking to them and smiling a lot, right? And sending them, birthday cards when they haven't even told them when their birthday is, right?
Yeah.
But I just find that it's a genuine process. I'll give you an example. So we're working on a customer right now. They're a very large healthcare, it's just shy of 10,000 employee healthcare organization up here in New England. And when we first met with them, it was incredible. They had all of their executives on a call, and it was like the 10th call, right? And they had almost gotten nowhere. And my first thing that I said after about 10 minutes, and I was like, let's just do the math, right? I don't need to know how much you guys make, although it's public because they're, a healthcare organization funded by taxpayer dollars. But I'm like, how many hours have you done this, right? You've had 10 meetings, 20 hours. What's your pre-work and post-work? I'm like, you guys have spent $100,000 and you've done nothing. Like, what I want to do is show you a way to accomplish more, feel more confident about your decision-making process, and take a lot of the politics out of, what this committee is creating. And now, we're on calls with these people, and, they're really buying in and leaning into the process. And it feels so good to build something and to see people, stand behind it. And really, they're now telling me my value on these calls, and it feels great.
Yeah. And what's the biggest difference between being a rep and now kind of running your own show?
Part of what I love about being a rep, it's funny because I'm a business. I own the business with my partner, right? But I still consider myself to be a rep. But when you're a sales rep, you kind of run your own business to begin with.
You do, admit it or not.
100%, right? The difference really is the upside and the stress. Like if you kill it as a rep, you wake up January 1st, super hungover, and and you're just like, oh my God, I got to do this all over again, right? But when you build your own show, you build your own shop, it's like you create something bigger than yourself. And I'll tell you, when that changed was when we hired people, because yeah, my partner and I are risk takers, right? We were risk takers. We took a big risk. But the folks that you hire to support the risk aren't risk takers,
Oh,
and you have to be able to support them and make it not feel risky.
yeah.
So it's that is what I enjoy about it the most now, is seeing people who are been working for us for years, who are finding their niche, enjoying what they're doing, and I really enjoy that side of it probably the most these days.
Now, what you described got me as a rep. That January 1st, you go from accelerators back to you don't even know what your compensation rate is, but you don't have your comp plan, you don't have your territory, you're not going to get it for 6 weeks to 3 months from now.
Unbelievable. My best friend was here last night. We were playing some pool, talking about business, and he's like, he told me, and I thought about you. He's like, yeah, I signed my 2020 commission plan on December 30th at 9 p.m. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I didn't know what my quota was. I didn't know what my compensation was. I didn't know if I was getting credit for shadow revenue until literally a day before the end of the year. I was like, that is insane. But that's corporate America for you.
Well, you start to wonder, what are all those meetings in October about, when they do the offsites and all that planning for next year?
It's a lot of golfing and high fiving, to be honest with you.
Well, but also from the psychology of the rep, when you go from being king of the hill, king of the mountain, king of the mountain, to not knowing where you stand, and it's not better, right? And you start to see the person taking your territory being interviewed,
right?
And
now
you have to train them.
Yep,
because
exactly.
Your manager's busy,
right? And he was telling me yesterday, he's like, it's pretty awesome. Like, they never backfilled my boss, and now I report directly to the VP. And I was like, so you report directly up 2 levels to a guy who really doesn't care that much about your ability to execute. He didn't give you a full comp plan until the end of the year, and you're still there. Why? And he's like, well, nobody asked me any questions. And I was like, okay, well, that and if that's what you want and that's what you're looking for, then that's okay, right? But if you want to take a risk and really make an impact and either go completely bankrupt and live on the street, or create a world that you can build something for you and your family, it just depends on what direction you want to take.
And how long did it take you with your business before it became not comfortable but not scary?
It's funny. So like I think I said before, I'm a project plan kind of guy. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a spreadsheet guy. I had this really scary spreadsheet I created. It was just a revenue tracker, funnel, but expected levels of growth, medium, high, and stretch goals. But on the second tab, it was, when do I go broke? And it was how much money I had in the bank, how much money I had in my 401k, what I had for credit line, and it was my monthly budget for my household. And it would tell me, based on my stretch goal, like I had like a date. It was like January 15th, 2015 was the date that I was going to go broke if I didn't hit a certain number. And we hit the number, right? And we got there, commission started to come in. But to answer your question, it took the better part of 3 years, I would say. I never once, and my partner didn't either, we never once said, oh man, what are we doing? Like, is this going to work? Like, we always knew that it was going to work.
Yeah. And I think too many people think it's 9 to 12 months. And I talk to people and it's like, well, do you know anybody? And they always mention some superstar on TikTok or something. It's
right.
Like, well, assume you're not them.
Right. I've tried the TikTok dances, and I got to stick to telecom sales. So,
that could be your side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. That's a retirement plan.
But because the difference, and I always say to reps, it's like your base salary is kind of what's holding you back. It really is not enabling you.
I read something the other day. It was amazing from Mark Cuban. It was like a base salary is something that, is the cost of taking away your dreams, something like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I sent that to my partner, Carrie. I thought that was amazing because it's true.
Well,
It's
yeah,
true.
because reps think that they're employees, and they are until there's a bad quarter or two bad quarters in a row, and then you don't get exactly treated.
Let me give you a real life example, and I'm far enough out of my previous job where it won't impact anything, and I always enjoyed my time there. But let me give you a real life example. So the last company I worked for, well, I won't name it, but you could find it if you wanted. Great people, amazing place. I was the #1 rep for 2 years in a row in the country. At one point I was at President's Club well, I forget the year, but I'd already qualified. This was like end of February. I'd already qualified for the next President's Club. I was the golden child. When I told them that I was leaving to go start my own business, I thought it was going to be, hey, congratulations, right? Like the best thing that they could have done would have been like, hey, congratulations, because guess what? I was becoming an agent and I could sell their services, right?
Yeah.
So you would think that they would give me a nice send off, and because it would make sense that I would sell as much of their services as possible because that's all I really knew. Come to find out, they owed me $65,000 in commission, and it was actually installed and billing. It wasn't one of those like, oh, I sold it and then I quit kind of gray
and it
areas.
wasn't done. Yeah.
And then it took them 6 months to finally tell me that they weren't going to pay me. So, part of that spreadsheet that I told you about, when do I go broke? That first spreadsheet included $65,000 that I expected to get and never did. So the lesson there is nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about you. I don't care if you're an executive, a salesperson, a founder, for the most part. If you get too big, nobody cares. So just support yourself and do the right thing for you and your family.
Yeah. And now as a leader, how do you kind of make sure that stuff doesn't happen? Not so much the pay, that's but more you get an A player, right? You do make all the sacrifice to get them. You go through the 9 months of wondering, are they the right fit?
Yep.
And then you get the year and a half where they're crushing it.
Yep.
How do you keep them happy and not do what was done, the typical thing, cut the territory or raise the quota?
Right. We're lucky that a lot of the people we have that work for us they're A players. They bring a lot of passion and excitement, but over the years we've had moments that were challenging, that they came to us with a situation that they wanted improved. And I think the best way to approach that is just to be honest and upfront, right? Like I found out early that, you can play games in sales, right? Like you can, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but you can play games in sales. Let's just call it what it is. But you can't play games when it comes to your employees or your business, or, because you forget the backstory, you forget this, like, so always take the high road, always let them be, give them an opportunity to be upfront and honest, and ask them, what do you want to get out of this? What are your goals as an individual? And do everything that you can, as long as they're, continuing to invest and lean in, do everything that you can to empower them to get to those goals.
And what do you see as the difference between the best salespeople you've worked with and just good, solid players?
It's one word, Brian, and it hasn't changed, and it will never change. Activity.
You think so?
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
The only way you're ever going to get to be successful, unless you sell a machine that puts $1 in and gives out 2, the only way you're ever going to be successful is to find a way to get out and talk to people, right? I have met very, very just, naturally talented salespeople who don't put the time and energy in to go through the cycles, and they sit there and they wonder, oh man, where are all my customers? Like there's one guy in particular that I remember. I won't use his name. He used to sit next to me, and that freaking guy, he used to work harder at not doing his job than actually doing his job. Right? We used to have actually wear my micro shirt, but we used to have a rule when I was a rep. It was like you had to make 150 calls a week, right? And I remember we were out to lunch one day, and he like let me in on his little secret. He's like, whenever I call a phone number and I get an auto attendant, I highlight it. I'm like, why do you highlight it? Why would you highlight an auto attendant? He's like, well, on Friday when I'm 60 calls behind, I just make
Boom, boom,
60
boom.
calls, and I'm like, what? It just blew my mind, right? This guy's naturally gifted. He's got a lot of people who love him, but he just didn't put the time in. So to answer your question, it's really simple for me. It's activity. You get out there, the hand-to-hand combat. You figure out, obviously you got to figure out your messaging. You got to figure out, what your company's good at. You got to understand some success stories that have happened and build off of that. But if you're not out there making the contacts and trying to get in touch with people in the multiple ways that you can in today's world, you're never going to be successful ever.
Yeah, I agree with you that, I mean, activity is a critical element, but how well you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get the rookies who, who certainly you probably had more energy in your 20s than you do today, right? I did.
Yeah. Although I feel great after my chiropractor appointment yesterday. This guy's worked miracles.
Right. But you have a talent for it. You have, gift of gab, a way of connecting with other people that you probably didn't have in your 20s, or certainly not as polished.
Well, thank you for that. And you're right. But I swear, I'll tell you, if you take a really naturally, outgoing human being, you take somebody who might be an introvert and scared of their own shadow, and you give them, 5 hours and one, or let's call it a week, and the guy that's a little, or girl that's a little bit scared of their shadow versus the person who's really outgoing, and this person outperforms them in terms of just overall activity. I mean, it's we're certainly not selling cars. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, we're selling multi-million-dollar contracts for high-end IT services to 1,000+ user organizations globally. But if you don't get out and try and talk to them and figure out what it is that they're going to be interested in, then you're never going to go anywhere.
But there must be a lot of strategy to that, because they don't buy on the first call, right?
They're never going to buy on the first call, right? And you can't sell on the first call, right? And I still make cold calls. It's weird. Sometimes I just get fired up, and I just I make 20 or 50 calls to target customers, and I get hung up on still, which is great. But like, it's great.
It's
But
great.
yeah, it's interesting. But there's a guy who actually he's the CIO of a very large retailer, and he has my last name. Right? There's not a lot of checks fields out there, and if I will get a meeting with him before I die. I'm actually going to take a little screenshot of this video if this comes out. I'm going to send this to him because, Mark, I'm coming for you. But yes, you need strategy, no doubt about it, and you can't sell on the first call, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not working for a company, service provider, company, whatever, that doesn't have anything that's worth selling, then it's your own fault if you stay there for too long, right? Go find a company that has a value, find the target market, and just get to the point where you're so tired at 6 o'clock at night that you just want to go to bed, and do that for 6 months, and you'll have yourself a funnel.
And how did you become great at it? I mean, did you, what I did is I kind of graded myself after each call, and I looked for distinctions, and I defined what an A call was, and I compared everything against that. Did you have a methodology, or?
So I've had the privilege, let's call it, of having some really terrible bosses and some really amazing bosses. And frankly, I learned a lot from the terrible bosses.
What not to do.
Yeah. And also, they were super talented salespeople that really had, they were very good in front of customers, but they were just not good human beings. But I think to answer your question, one thing I've always done, and I still do, even yesterday, I wrote up a whole RFP and I sent it off to a bunch of people, and I wanted their feedback.
Yeah.
One thing I've done is I've always been open for feedback, and not just open. I've been direct with people. Like I remember going to a meeting with like the regional trainer, Eric. Eric and I would go to meetings, and on the way back, I'd always ask him, like, "Hey," he would always tell me what I did right, and I love hearing that. Right, every sales guy needs their ego to be, stroked a little bit, but I really wanted to know what I could be better at, because I found that if I could learn that and I could, put it into my daily routine, that I could get results out of it. So, be open and be ready for constructive criticism. There's nothing worse than somebody who says they want criticism, constructive criticism, and then you give them feedback and then they fight you. It's like,
and they argue with you.
Yeah. It's like, okay, like, sorry, but see you later.
How did you get that way? Were you an athlete? Did you have a coach in your life when you were young? Did your dad?
Yeah, my parents.
They were free with the feedback.
Yes. So like I said, my dad was a big, sales wise, was always, I always looked up to him. He would create his own schedule, right? We lived, we certainly had tough times, but we were never like wealthy, but we always had money to go on vacations and stuff. And I just wanted to mimic that. But the way I got a lot of feedback, let's just say. I remember, like, it felt like every night we'd have dinner as a family. My sister's like perfect, right? She's gonna probably be president someday. They'd be like, "Okay, Molly, dinner's done. Like, you can go do your thing. Chris, we're gonna sit at the table and have a couple of conversations." And I'd sit there. I could still feel the way the chair felt on my back.
Yeah.
Right. And they would give me, they'd give me the old compliment sandwich, like, "Hey, congratulations for, changing your underwear and brushing your teeth, but maybe tomorrow put your bike away. And by the way, we love you." So I was always, my dad and mom have always been great at giving me feedback and helping me along the way. And it's been, and so have some of my business coaches and my business partner. We come out of meetings still, and him and I joke around. It's like, the first thing I always say to him is like, "Hey, 1 to 10, 1 to 10." Because I feel like that's a really good way to get a instant reaction, right? And sometimes it's like, that was a 3, and we work on it. You know what I really love, and I've been doing this, drives some people crazy, but I did it yesterday to my friend, and I got an honest answer out of him. If you have something that you want to ask somebody and you want to get their real honest answer, you can't let them think about it for very long. So I'll always say, like, "Hey, Brian, I got a question for you, but here's the deal. You have 3 seconds to answer," right? You ask them the question in 1, 2, and you force it, right? You don't let them get stuck in their thoughts, right? And you'll get their honest feedback. Sometimes they get embarrassed because they'll say something without the filter, but it's a great way to get honest feedback.
Right. They don't get time to process it. It's coming right off the reptilian brain.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it hurts, but it's good.
Well, that's how we get better. You can sit around
Absolutely.
waiting for us to recognize it, or we can just ask somebody who already recognizes it.
100%. And sometimes it's painful, because let's be real, right? I said it before.
Yeah, it's never fun, but
salespeople have incredible egos. We just do. That's just who we are. And sometimes, we don't. Sometimes our self-esteem is super thin, right? And it's like you're just so high energy, and everything is impacting the way you feel. But if you constantly walk around thinking that you know everything, you really know nothing.
You don't grow.
You don't grow.
And you tend
pain is growth.
Pain is growth. Great. This has been a great conversation, Chris. Where can people go to connect and learn more about you and your company?
So net7.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow us on all social media platforms. And if you guys are in the fight, I know this is a great resource for everybody on the sales side. Keep fighting, right? Sales is not something that the world could operate on without. We're not salespeople. We're solutions people. We're helping people to get out of their own way to make good decisions for themselves and for their business. So keep fighting, Brian. Keep operating with this amazing platform that you have, and I'm sure we'll talk again.